Most people believe reheating food is simply a matter of convenience. But what the research is now revealing is that certain everyday foods, the ones sitting in your refrigerator right now, undergo a molecular transformation when reheated that can silently damage your DNA, suppress your immune system, and create conditions in which cancer cells find it easier to thrive. I want you to think about that for a moment. Not because I want to frighten you, but because understanding the chemistry of your food, especially how heat changes it, is one of the most practical and immediately actionable things you can do to protect your health starting today. There is one food on this list that surprises almost everyone, something most people consider a health food, something you've probably reheated dozens of times without ever knowing what it was becoming inside that microwave. We'll get to it. And I'd love to hear from you right now. Drop a comment below and tell me, what's the one food you reheat most often? Your answer might surprise you by the end of this video. I'm Dr. William Lee, physician, scientist, and founder of the Angiogenesis Foundation. My work over the past 3 decades has taken me inside some of the world's most extraordinary research institutions, from Harvard Medical School to the National Institutes of Health to Stanford. And it is always centered on one profound question. How does what we eat change the way our bodies defend themselves? I've spent years studying the body's 5 natural defense systems: angiogenesis, regeneration, the microbiome, DNA protection, and immunity. And what we're learning about how reheated food interacts with those systems, particularly your DNA protection network, is extraordinary. Today, I want to walk you through 5 specific foods that the science now tells us should never be reheated. And more importantly, I want to show you what to do instead, because this is not about restriction. It's about addition. Let's start with spinach. If you cook a batch of spinach, refrigerate it, and reheat it the next day, you are participating in a chemical reaction that has been studied extensively by food scientists at the European Food Safety Authority and confirmed in research published in the journal Food Chemistry. Here's what happens. Spinach is extraordinarily rich in nitrates, naturally occurring compounds that, in their original form, actually support cardiovascular health by relaxing blood vessels and improving oxygen delivery throughout the body. Your body, under normal conditions, converts these nitrates into nitric oxide, which is beneficial. But when spinach is reheated, particularly at high temperatures, in a microwave or on a stovetop, bacteria that are naturally present in cooked, stored spinach begin converting those nitrates into nitrites. And when those nitrites are further heated, they transform into a class of compounds called nitrosamines. Research from the German Federal Institute for Risk Assessment has documented this transformation pathway in detail. And nitrosamines are among the most potent dietary carcinogens studied in laboratory settings, directly implicated in damage to the protective methylation patterns on your DNA, which is the very mechanism your DNA defense system uses to silence cancer-promoting genes. A 47-year-old nutritionist named Sarah Chen from Portland, Oregon, came to one of our affiliated research programs after a routine blood panel revealed elevated markers of oxidative DNA stress. She was health conscious, ate spinach regularly, and almost always batch cooked it on Sundays and reheated it throughout the week. When she shifted to eating her cooked spinach only once, fresh off the pan, and replaced her reheated portions with raw spinach and salads with lemon dressing, her oxidative stress markers normalized within 8 weeks. Think of cooked spinach like a ticking clock. The moment it cools in your refrigerator, that clock starts. Every reheat accelerates it. The good news is this: raw spinach is one of the most powerful sources of lutein, beta-carotene, and camphorol, all of which actively support your DNA repair enzymes. So rather than reheating yesterday's cooked spinach, add a handful of fresh raw spinach to a smoothie with mango and ginger, because the vitamin C in the mango will actually enhance your absorption of the iron in that spinach. Your body wants to be healthy, and when you give it the right information, it responds. Now let's talk about rice. This one surprises people most because rice feels so benign, so fundamental, so safe. But what the research is now revealing about reheated rice involves a bacterium called Bacillus cereus, and the findings from the UK's Food Standards Agency and the European Centre for Disease Prevention and Control are deeply illuminating. Bacillus cereus is a spore-forming bacterium that survives the initial cooking of rice. When cooked rice is left to cool at room temperature, those spores germinate and multiply rapidly. And here is the mechanism that makes this particularly dangerous. Bacillus cereus produces two categories of toxins, one that survives refrigeration and one that survives reheating. Most people believe that reheating kills bacteria, and for many pathogens that's true. But the toxins that Bacillus cereus has already produced are heat stable. You are not killing the danger, you are simply making it hotter. These toxins, when consumed, create a cascade of inflammatory signaling in the gut lining that research published in the Journal of Infection has shown can disrupt the tight junction proteins of your intestinal epithelium. The very proteins that keep your gut microbiome environment sealed and protected. When those tight junctions are compromised, your immune surveillance system is forced into a chronic, low-grade defensive posture that over time has been associated in research from Tufts University's Human Nutrition Research Center with elevated systemic inflammation, impaired natural killer cell function, and reduced capacity for immune-mediated cancer surveillance. A 39-year-old software engineer named Marcus Webb from Chicago told our team about his recurrent episodes of sudden nausea and gut cramping that he'd experienced for years, which he'd attributed to stress. Marcus was a habitual rice reheater, cooking large batches on Sunday and microwaving portions each day. When he adopted the strategy of cooling his rice immediately in an ice bath after cooking and then refrigerating it within 30 minutes and reheating only once, his gastrointestinal episodes resolved almost entirely within a month. But even better than reheating once is this. Use cold cooked rice for rice salads with olive oil, herbs, and lemon. Because cooled rice that has never been reheated actually develops resistant starch, a prebiotic fiber that feeds your most beneficial gut bacteria. This is where it gets fascinating. The very act of not reheating your rice transforms it into a gut health superfood. Food is information for your cells, and cold rice sends your microbiome a message your warm, reheated rice never could. Next, let's discuss eggs. Eggs are extraordinary, one of nature's most complete proteins, rich in choline, lutein, and zeaxanthin, compounds that support brain health, eye protection, and regenerative signaling in your cells. But when you hard-boil or scramble eggs, allow them to cool, and then reheat them, particularly in a microwave, something happens to the protein structure that most people have never been told about. Research from the University of Agricultural Sciences in Sweden and published findings from the Institute of Food Research in Norwich have shown that reheating eggs causes the protein chains, particularly in egg white, to form advanced glycation end products, or AGEs. These are abnormal protein structures that your immune system does not recognize as friendly tissue. When AGEs accumulate in your body, they trigger a process called RAGE signaling, the receptor for advanced glycation end products, which is a molecular alarm system that creates inflammation throughout the vascular endothelium. Research from Harvard's Department of Nutrition has linked chronically elevated AGE intake to accelerated telomere shortening in immune cells, which is a direct measure of your biological aging and your DNA protection system's resilience. A 52-year-old teacher named Patricia Morales from Miami had been meal prepping scrambled eggs every Sunday night and microwaving them each morning. Over 4 years of this habit, she had developed persistent joint inflammation that her physician had labeled early-stage arthritis. When she shifted to cooking her eggs fresh each morning, even a simple 2-minute soft boil, and added a daily portion of blueberries alongside them for their anthocyanin content, her inflammatory markers dropped measurably within 12 weeks. Think of egg proteins like origami, perfectly folded when fresh. When reheated incorrectly, the folds collapse into shapes that your body treats like invaders. Cook your eggs fresh when you can, and when that's not possible, eat them cold. A cold, hard-boiled egg in a salad causes far less age formation than a reheated one. And pair them with fresh tomatoes, because the lycopene in tomatoes actively suppresses age-related inflammatory pathways, as research from Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health has documented. Now I want to pause here because I said at the beginning of this video that there is one food on this list that surprises almost everyone. something most people consider one of the healthiest things they can eat, something celebrated by nutritionists and fitness communities alike. I want you to guess what it might be in the comments below. Think about it. And while you're thinking, I want to acknowledge something. I know that what I've been sharing today can feel like a lot. You might be watching this and thinking, I've been doing some of these things for years. I want to be clear. Your body is more capable than you think. The human biological system is resilient, adaptive, and constantly working to repair and defend. The science on this is remarkable. Even small, consistent changes create measurable shifts in your health defense systems. You don't need perfection. You need awareness and direction. And I'm honored you're watching because this kind of knowledge, once you have it, changes your relationship with your kitchen in the most empowering way possible. Let's continue with chicken. And this one, I want to explain very carefully, because the issue is not simply about undercooking, which everyone knows to avoid. The issue is about what happens to the protein structure in cooked chicken when it is reheated multiple times, and the implications for your immune system that research from the University of Madrid and the Wageningen University and Research Center in the Netherlands has been documenting over the last decade. When chicken is cooked and then cooled and reheated, the myosin and actin proteins, the structural proteins in muscle fiber, undergo a secondary denaturation event. In this process, the tightly folded protein structures partially unfold in a different configuration than they did during initial cooking. And research published in Food and Chemical Toxicology has demonstrated that this secondary denaturation produces heterocyclic amines, or HCAs, even at temperatures far below those required to generate HCAs during original cooking. HCAs are compounds that intercalate into the double helix of your DNA. They physically insert themselves between the base pairs of your genetic code, and when your DNA replication machinery encounters them, it makes errors. These errors are the foundation of mutagenic events, the first steps in carcinogenesis. The International Agency for Research on Cancer classifies HCA-containing cooked meats as Group 2A probable human carcinogens. A 44-year-old fitness coach named Daniel Okafor from Houston had built an entire meal prep culture around reheated grilled chicken breasts 6 days a week, reheated twice each day in a microwave. A routine health screening at age 44 revealed elevated markers of DNA strand breaks in his white blood cells, a finding that led his physician to refer him to a research program studying dietary HCA exposure. When Daniel replaced his reheated chicken with freshly cooked chicken, grilled in smaller daily portions, and added a daily serving of rosemary-seasoned vegetables alongside it, his DNA strand break markers normalized within 10 weeks. Research from the University of Kansas has specifically shown that rosemary extract can reduce HCA formation in cooked meat by up to 72% because the carnosic acid in rosemary intercepts the chemical precursors to HCA formation. So if you love chicken, cook it fresh in smaller amounts, marinate it in rosemary and lemon before cooking, and enjoy it immediately. The science on this is remarkable, and it's entirely in your favor. The fifth food, and this is the one I teased at the start, is mushrooms. Yes, mushrooms. The food celebrated by everyone from immunologists to longevity researchers. The food I have spoken about in dozens of lectures for its extraordinary beta-glucan content and its ability to activate natural killer cells. Mushrooms are genuinely one of the most powerful functional foods on the planet. And yet, what happens when you reheat them is a textbook lesson in how heat can reverse biology. Research from the Spanish National Research Council and a landmark study published in the International Journal of Food Sciences and Nutrition have documented what happens to the protein and enzyme structure of mushrooms during reheating in detail. Mushrooms are rich in a compound called ergothioneine, an antioxidant amino acid that your body cannot synthesize on its own, which makes dietary sources absolutely critical. Ergothioneine specifically protects the mitochondria in your cells, the energy-generating organelles that are also central to apoptosis, the programmed cell death mechanism your body uses to eliminate precancerous cells before they can proliferate. When mushrooms are cooked and then reheated, particularly at high temperatures or for extended periods, the ergothioneine content degrades significantly, and more importantly, the polysaccharide beta-glucan structures that activate your innate immune system begin to fragment into smaller chains that research from Penn State's Department of Food Science has shown are far less effective at stimulating macrophage activity and natural killer cell proliferation, two of your most essential frontline cancer surveillance mechanisms. A 61-year-old retired nurse named Helen Nakamura from Seattle had been cooking large batches of shiitake and cremini mushrooms weekly and reheating portions daily, believing, correctly, that she was consuming a health superfood. A functional medicine evaluation revealed that despite her excellent diet in other respects, her natural killer cell activity scores were below optimal range. When she shifted to cooking her mushrooms fresh in small batches, sautéed in olive oil at moderate heat for no more than 5 minutes, her NK cell activity scores improved measurably over a 90-day period. Think of the beta-glucans in mushrooms like a key that unlocks your immune system's defenses. Reheating bends and warps that key, and a warped key cannot open the lock. Cook your mushrooms fresh and at moderate, not high, heat. And to add rather than only subtract, combine your fresh mushrooms with a source of vitamin D, because research from the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health has shown that the combination of mushroom beta-glucans and vitamin D has a synergistic activating effect on your immune defense cells that neither compound achieves alone. Now let me bring all of this together in a way that you can actually use today, because what I want most for you is not alarm. It is agency. What you've just learned is that 5 of the most common foods in people's refrigerators, spinach, rice, eggs, chicken, and mushrooms, undergo molecular transformations when reheated that range from nitrosamine formation and DNA damage to bacterial toxin accumulation and microbiome disruption, to age formation and telomere stress, to heterocyclic amine production in muscle proteins, to the degradation of the very immune-activating compounds that made you buy these foods in the first place. That's not a coincidence. It's a pattern. And the pattern tells us something profound. Freshness is not just a culinary preference. It is a biological imperative. The practical pivot is simpler than you might think. For spinach, eat it raw more often than cooked, and when you do cook it, eat it immediately and never reheat it. For rice, cool it quickly, refrigerate it promptly, and consider eating cold rice salads that actually leverage the resistant starch transformation. For eggs, invest the 4 minutes in the morning to cook them fresh. Your DNA defense system will reflect that investment over time. For chicken, cook smaller portions more frequently, marinate in rosemary, and eat it freshly made. For mushrooms, sauté in moderate heat and eat immediately. Keeping fresh mushrooms sliced and ready in your refrigerator takes 30 seconds and changes what ends up in your pan. Your body is more capable than you think. It has 5 extraordinary defense systems working around the clock, rebuilding damaged tissue through regeneration, guiding new blood vessel growth through angiogenesis, orchestrating your immune response, protecting and repairing your genetic code, and balancing your microbiome's vast ecosystem of protective organisms. What you eat and how you prepare it is the most direct and powerful language you can speak to those systems. Every meal is a message. You have more control over that message than any pharmaceutical compound can offer. I have sat across the table from patients who were told their cancer risk was simply genetic, simply inevitable, simply beyond their control. And I have watched those same individuals, armed with the right knowledge about food, about preparation, about the specific chemistry of what they were putting into their bodies, make changes that moved their biological markers in directions their physicians had not expected. The kitchen is a laboratory, and you are the scientist. What the research is now revealing, and this is the part I find most moving, is that the human body does not passively receive what we feed it. It actively interprets it. It responds. It adapts. It heals. The 5 foods I've described today are not your enemies. Spinach is still a marvel. Rice is still a gift. Eggs are still extraordinary. Chicken is still a powerful protein source. Mushrooms are still among the most immune-activating foods in existence. The science doesn't change what these foods are. It changes when and how you eat them. That distinction between the food itself and the preparation is where your power lives. And knowing that, truly knowing it, at the level of mechanism and biology, changes not just what you put on your plate, but how you feel about the act of feeding yourself. What we're learning is extraordinary, and the most remarkable thing about it is that the answer keeps coming back to the same place. Your body wants to be healthy, and when you give it the right information, it will always try to meet you there. If you found this valuable, share it with someone you love. A parent, a sibling, a friend who meal preps. The conversation that starts in the kitchen can ripple through an entire family's health for generations. And I want to hear from you. Which of these 5 foods surprised you the most? Drop it in the comments below. I read them, and your responses genuinely shape the science we discuss together in this community. Because that's what this is. A community of curious, informed, empowered people who believe that knowledge is the most powerful medicine of all.